Hi everyone, welcome back to this week's Cybersecurity Awareness Month. My name is Luigi Ficera, and I'm part of the Cybersecurity team at ITS in Queens College. It's hard to believe that this is going to be the final week for Cyber Awareness Month. I feel like we covered a lot of information in the past few weeks. We talked about phishing email, we also went over how to protect your data, and additionally, we talked about how to strengthen your defense with your computer and your profile. I feel like with this week's final cyber awareness, I think it's very important we talked about the one important thing, the times when we are surfing the web. See, for me, surfing the web has become such a amazing feature for everyone. We're in this day and age, we're practically always on the web. We're on social media, if we're doing some online shopping, banking, or even just a simple Google search or any form of entertainment, it's become part of our lives. And when it comes to that, that's the one thing we need to know. Are we protected? And I feel like a lot of people overlook on us things that we just take for granted when we're surfing the web. That's why I feel like with this week's cyber awareness, I wanted to cover a couple of things that I feel will be essential for everyone. I want to talk about strategies while surfing the web. Basically, I just want everyone to start building a habit for themselves when it comes to protecting themselves. You know, but we also have a plethora of amazing tools that are offered to us that I feel like not everyone is aware of. These tools come so many features that make it very easy for us to maintain that security while having that freedom to surf the web. While we're surfing the web, everything will seem normal, but it's very important to know that cyber criminals are out there. We've said it in the past few weeks with our videos that cyber criminals will do whatever they can to find anything that seems valuable to them. That could be data, exploit, and it could be a lot of reasonings why they seek it. It could be for monetary gain. It could just be a personal gain. But that doesn't mean that we should be afraid constantly. We just need to be aware of it. Have common sense. We talked about in the past, emails, whatever email you find, if you seem suspicious, you know, there's always so many things to look at when it comes to email, spelling errors, looking at the email address, and, you know, if it's just one of those moments where the email might even try to scare you into hoping that you would fall for their game and click on the link. You know, that link could lead to anywhere. It could lead to a fake website that's masking to be a legitimate website. The link could be for a download that could, potentially be malware. It's just stuff like that we need to be aware of when we're surfing the web. And sometimes when we're doing things like that, we might accidentally click on something that we're not supposed to. When we're talking about surfing the web, you're granted to so many resources that, are great for yourself, for your computer. And oftentimes when we're surfing the web, we come across to something that we would, you know, download. It could be some software, program, drivers, things like that, to boost our performance on our computers. For me, like I'm always downloading something, if it's work related, if it's for personal use. And, a lot of times when we're downloading something, you're basically putting something in your computer that you found on, on the web. And, sometimes like when it comes to downloading it, you just have to ask yourself, did I download something that's malicious or is it something, legitimate? And the first thing I recommend to do when it comes to that is just look at the website. I mean, the website that you're on, is it a legitimate website? Is it a reputable one? If you're not too sure about it, I always like to do the thing called, just looking it up through Google or various forums out there. And it's always good to learn from people's experience to understand if it's legitimate or not. And, if you really want to be safe, which I think it's the best way to do it, just download it directly from the App Store. I mean, Microsoft, Apple, they have their own store that you can just basically download it directly from there. They're all from verified developers. And the one thing I would recommend is that third-party websites, like for example, let's say if you go on this random website and they're saying there's a Microsoft application that you can download from there. It was developed by Microsoft, but the thing is that you're not 100% sure. So I would recommend that instead of just downloading it from there, just go directly to the Microsoft store and just download it directly from that store. And in any case, is like if you really want to be sure, there's a lot of security antivirus programs that are built into your computer. Like for example, Microsoft has Defender, Apple has their own security software, and you can just right click on the software itself and it'll scan it, and it'll look it up and deem it if it's malicious or not. But don't forget, and I'm sure like we've said it many times in the past with our other videos, is that when you're using your antivirus software, always like make sure it's updated, because when it updates, it's going to have the new features. It's going to be constantly, updating its list of viruses, because sometimes there's always a new virus being developed, and, developers are always constantly updating the list. And that's why it's very essential, when you're doing things like that. So since we're like still on the topic of talking about the legitimacy of a web page, it's very hard to avoid common mistakes that we do when we're surfing the web, and that's when we're entering the URL. Now, I thought this was very like important to talk about, which I feel like maybe not a lot of people know. There's this technique that cyber criminals like to use called domain spoofing, essentially where they'll create a website that appears legitimate, but it's not the legitimate web page. They will take like very popular sites like Google, Netflix, or any social media web page, and it works like this, where they would take the name and they'll try to change it up a little. Like sometimes, like for example, like what I have here with Google, they'll use with the way how it's spelled, they would use the number 0 instead of O's because they look similar. Or like with the Netflix one, sometimes they'll add an extra letter, but things like that, it makes it very hard to see. And the same thing with Instagram, as you can see, they'll miss the letter A, and it appears legitimate. So you're probably it's very, very tricky to to prevent this, because sometimes we often type too fast. We're not really looking at the screen. So many things are going on, and you're being directed to a web page, and you're putting in your credentials, and you're not 100% sure what kind of malicious activities are going to occur. They could be stealing your credentials, or you could be ending up downloading a virus like spyware that'll be hidden in your computer. So that's why we mentioned this in the past, with the other videos. Like when you're looking at the URL, make sure when you see the HTTPS, make sure there's the letter S on it to basically confirm it's legitimate and it's a secure website. Like this is another example that I thought it was very important to bring up, because during my time when I was working as a help desk agent, when I usually assist students and staff, a lot of times when I look at their windows on their computer, they have like a lot of tabs open. Like I've seen so many tabs open. It's like incredibly, confusing. And a lot of times when you're doing things like that, it's not a good idea that, for example, you have one tab open where you're doing your banking activity, and then you have another tab where you're doing your shopping, and then you have another tab where you have school related stuff going on. And that's why I advise a lot of people try not to have too many tabs open. Like if you need to have certain things, you know, left alone, it's always best to bookmark it, or maybe just open up another browser, and have it, a dedicated browser just to do the most, important things when it comes to sensitive information. And, then of course, it eliminates a lot of distractions when it comes to it, because then, good, imagine you're doing something and then you accidentally trying to do something, you're screenshotting a web page that you need to save, and then you accidentally posted it on your social media profile, and unfortunately in the background your banking information is there, and then cyber criminals going to see that, and then they're going to take that as an opportunity to take advantage of it and try to gain access to your account. I feel like throughout the years web browsers have come up with so many important features, which we're also going to talk about in the later slides. But I really wanted to talk about this one more importantly, and this is with profiles. Now, almost every web browser that we have in our machine comes with these profiles that you can create. And, it's great for a lot of things. Like, for example, if you have a shared computer and if you want to create more than one profile, now with these profiles, you can store your information. Like nowadays, you can store, your credit card information. You can have your own extensions on it, and all your saved passwords with it as well. And I feel like people really should utilize profiles more, and I'm going to explain why. So let's say, for example, with me, when I'm using my web browser, I have more than one profile, and the one profile I use, which it's basically just for personal use, if I just want to roam on, surf the web, do normal things, watching YouTube, going on social media, things like that, I would save it for that. And then I have another profile which I basically use for, purchasing, if I want to buy something, or if it's any bank related, if I'm paying bills, things like that. And I would have it set for that specific profile, and that specific profile, I have it custom with, specific settings. I customize the settings when it comes to privacy. I have extensions added to it as well. Like if I want to add a couple of things to block ads, and it's just things like that are great to have. And I've seen a lot of people having just one profile, and they have that profile used for almost everything. And I feel like just having more than one profile is a great way to just keep your information in different places, spread them out. Don't keep everything in one, where it's just more accessible for malicious actors to gain access to. And that's how I personally think just having more than one profile is very important to have. And a lot of web browsers are they're having that feature as well, and it's getting so easy to do it, and it's great. I mean, you can customize it to however you want. Now you can add a profile picture, you can change the background of the browser. They're becoming more than just surfing the web. They're becoming more of a personal, profile for yourself, which the way how I see it. Yes, we're going to be talking about it again. I know this has been talked about more than once with our previous videos, but there's a good reason for that, and I feel like repetition is key, and I feel like the more you hear about it, the more you're going to end up doing it. And it's like what I said, in the beginning of this presentation. We're trying to create habits, good habits for you. in order to fully protect yourself. Now, when it comes to antivirus, that's our biggest defense here. It's something that it's very necessary to have with our PCs, and updating it, make sure it gets that latest update, because, when it updates, features are being pushed, um, the virus list grows, because like I've said, there's always new viruses going on, and every time you're updating it, you're updating that list, and it makes it very easy for the antivirus to detect anything malicious. But what the cool part about having an antivirus is that you can customize it, and there's ways you can do it that not many people know, but there's you can scan it periodically. Now, if you're the kind of person that doesn't really want to do it manually over and over again, you can have it run in the background, which is great because while you're doing your work, it wouldn't interrupt you unless if there's something found on the PC. But if you feel like you don't really want that, and maybe you feel like maybe it's affecting your performance with the PC, which rarely happens, you can do a manual scan. Personally, I think it's best to at least do at least about every 2 weeks a quick scan, and maybe once a month do a full scan. Well, it really depends on how often you're downloading stuff, and there's like that, those kind of things to consider. And ransomware, it's another tactic that cyber criminals like to use, and this is mostly for monetary gains. And it's very important to have your files protected in case that ever happens. Like if you've been working on something and all that hard work, and then all of a sudden it's been encrypted by a hacker, and the only way to get the keys to unlock it, you have to either pay them the ransom. And a lot of times you don't ever want to do that, because you never know what other tricks they might have for you. But in any cases, if I always like to have backup. Having backup is an essential thing, and a lot of PCs nowadays are they have built-in backup features, like Microsoft with OneDrive. And it's coming to a point where now Microsoft is basically telling users, you should have it enabled, and to the point where now it's part of its security system. But, and I also think it's very, important, I guess, a lot of times if antivirus doesn't really catch these things, and it could happen, it's possible. And that's what we're also here. We have something that's another important thing to discuss, and that's your instinct, common sense. I mean, your PC, it's something that you use every day. It's something that you're familiar with, how it runs, what it does, and it's like when you own a car, you're driving it one day and then something's going on with it, and you're like, I haven't heard this sound before, but I should look into it. And that's how it is when it comes to your personal machine. And there's a lot of things to look into if you feel like something is wrong. Like the biggest one is that your performance. Your PC, if it's running slow, if you're seeing unfamiliar softwares popping up, your battery is degrading very quickly if it's a laptop, and it could be very challenging. And there's so many tricks that you can do that that can essentially be helpful. People have used Task Manager. Task Manager is a great feature that Windows has, and Apple has their own version, which is Monitor Activity. You look at it and you just see what is running and what's being constantly harvesting all those resources, and you could just find what process is doing that. And then when you find it, the best thing to do is quarantine it. And then when you quarantine it, it's always good, like, just do some research on it, like find out what kind of virus is it, like how is it very challenging to remove it, is it something where does it come back, does it affect, does it spread to my files? there's just some things like that to consider. And, of course, it's very important to remove it and always keep logs. Logs are another great thing to, create, to help you create awareness for. And, it's just something that I feel like a lot of people should be considered doing when it comes to, situations like that. But hey, you could always be ahead of the game. You know, it doesn't necessarily mean you should wait for it to happen. And there's ways that you can do it. Research. There's tons of research you can do. You can follow, subscribe, various tech companies, cybersecurity news outlets. Nowadays, tech companies are using social media to post anything important. Same thing with cybersecurity too. You know, it's always great. You subscribe to them, you get an email saying, "Oh, there was this, breach that occurred." And then if you think, if you look into it and you realize, "Oh, maybe I'm part of that breach," it's very important to, always be, aware of it. And same thing goes when you're downloading, pro software. You know, always, once in a while, check out the manufacturer's website. There's times where they will like do you can subscribe newsletters, and let's say for example, you're using this software, and there was a exploit being found where it creates a backdoor for cyber criminals. You know, you get an email from them saying, "Hey, keep an eye on this. Download the newest patch. This patch will resolve X, Y, and Z." That's things like that that people should be aware of, and it's very important to, have things like that in mind. So I feel like for the next few slides, we're going to go over a couple of things that were already discussed in the previous videos, which I feel it's a good thing to bring up I feel like it's very important that ties with this week's topic, and that's starting with passwords. And I feel like, because we're constantly using our passwords when we're surfing the web, to access our accounts. And, I feel like a lot of people really neglect the importance of having a secure password. And so many people have been doing things like using their name, their birthdays, their social security numbers. But the worst one of all is just reusing the same password over and over again. And, hackers love this because that's like almost the equivalent of having a master key that unlocks almost every door in a building. So part of it, I feel like people really should understand is that when you're making a password, be very creative with it. Make sure it's at least more than 6 characters with a mix of special characters as well. And when you're doing that, always plan yourself to change it every 6 months to ensure that, your accounts are going to be more secure like that. But, nowadays with so many of passwords that we were creating for so many accounts, organizations have created password managers that have become so important to the point where it eases the workload of just dealing with the hassle of creating and remembering passwords. And I feel like that's another important thing to be aware of when we're surfing the web. So I feel like the next part we would be important to talk about is the Wi-Fi connections. Especially when you're surfing the web, you always want to stay connected. And a couple of things to be aware of when you're attempting to connect to Wi-Fi, especially if it's in a public area. Make sure that you verify with a trusted source that you're connecting to their actual Wi-Fi device. And another thing to also consider is looking at their encryption types. I mean, it's pretty easy when you're connecting to them. It's going to show up on your computer. Latest is always the greatest. Make sure it's on the latest encryption type. Some organizations, some places, they might still be using the old encryption type, it's WEP. So just to be, more secure, it's recommended that you use a VPN in case of, any malicious actor is attempting to breach the Wi-Fi device. So to ensure an efficient and secure browser experience, it's essential to review your settings and explore a variety of browser extensions, and with the addition of consistently running updates for your browser. When you're customizing your settings and installing helpful extensions, you can enhance productivity and privacy. Regular updates are crucial as they close security gaps and that hackers could exploit in outdated software. Providing the latest protection against malware, phishing, and cyber threats, together with these practices, it's going to keep your browser optimized, safe, and fully equipped for a seamless online experience. So to protect your browsing experience, a variety of extensions are available that will help strengthen your security, enhance privacy, and safeguard your data. Popular security-focused extensions include ad blockers, which prevent malicious ads and trackers, password managers that generate and securely store your complex passwords, and anti-tracking tools that block third-party trackers, preserving your online privacy. Additionally, there's also another powerful tool called the HTTPS enforcing tools that will ensure that you're connecting to a secure site whenever possible. So when you're incorporating these extensions, you add multiple layers of defense, creating a safer and more private browsing environment. So I'm going to cover a little bit more with web browsers, which it's based on my recommendation. So I use either Brave or Firefox. The great thing about it is that you don't really have to do the extra setup with these two. They both boost security, adding privacy-focused extension like uBlock Origin or Privacy Badger, and of course it also blocks trackers. And then we're going to cover two-factor again, which we have done previously in the other videos. Tools like Google Authenticator, Microsoft Authenticator, Dual Mobile, it just adds another layer of protection, generating codes, while you're, going along with the password, making it a little bit more harder for hackers to access your account. Then again, we have the VPNs, which encrypt your connection. And, we have popular choices here like ExpressVPN, NordVPN, and ProtonVPN. It's very essential to use it if you're planning to surf the web in public, if you're using public Wi-Fi. It's very known to have strong security. And, each of these tools, secure browsers, two-factor authentication, VPNs, it adds extra layers of security and privacy, whether it's through tracking prevention, secure logins, or encrypted connections. Together, they make a comprehensive strategy and secure browsing for online protection. So folks, just to do a little recap about what we went over today when browsing the web securely, several essential practices and tools to consider. First things first, when it comes to your web browser, start configuring its privacy settings, to limit tracking and enhance its security. Or you can use the recommended browsers that I mentioned, such as Brave or Firefox, that come with privacy extensions and has its own settings set up already by default. Additionally, you want to make sure your Wi-Fi connections, especially when you're in public area, is secured, especially in those areas where vulnerabilities are higher for you. And then when you're visiting websites, always check and verify if it's secure. Always look at its HTTPS. Make sure there's that letter S in it in the URL. When, basically that indicates that it's a secure connections. And, as you're browsing, remember, take steps and leave no traces of data behind. That's you're achieving this by clearing your cookies and browser history, and use incognito mode when necessary. And like I mentioned previously with the browser's extensions and all the other tools that were brought up, these are there for you, available to enhance your privacy. And always be mindful for not not leaving any digital footprint behind. If you follow each of these steps, with the browser histories, going on secured connections, managing your data traces, it can all help you, navigate the internet more safely and protect your personal information online. As we wrap up, I want to thank everyone for participating and for your attention. Remember, if you have any questions or need further assistance, please reach out to any ITS staff member. We're more than happy to support with any queries that you might have. From time to time throughout the semester, we'll be sharing more information on cybersecurity awareness to help you stay informed and safe online. So keep an eye out for those updates. This has been a fantastic session, and we hope you found the information valuable and empowering. We look forward to seeing you next year with even more updates and tools to help you and keep you secure and informed. Once again, thank you and see you next year.